Hi, everybody. So Whit is
Hello.
here with me today. Yay. And she just
Woohoo.
launched her podcast. So I want to
Yes.
show you her YouTube channel before I space it out because I'm very spacey lately. So it's under Whit's name. So when you go
Mhm.
look for it, but I'll put the link below. And she's got a lot of great shows she's already put out there.
Yeah, it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. It's so much fun. It's one of those projects that came to me last year, and I was thinking about, what do I want to put out into the world for humanity that's not just about me. And there's more and more light workers like yourself included, honey, that are like wanting to really bring other voices into the fold and not just you sitting and talking the
Yeah.
whole time. It's like you're having conversations. So I was like, how can I do that? And so, yeah, I'm really, really excited because there's just so many points of view out there that haven't gotten to be shared that loudly. So I'm just like trying to amplify as much as I can. So,
I love it. I
yeah.
think it's great. And
Mhm.
we're going to talk about points of view today too,
Yes.
because sometimes we get stuck like in the middle of a point of view, almost like when you're in a really bad relationship and you can't see your way out of it. And but everybody else who's watching is like, whoo, that's not so good,
Right, right. They
right?
can see it and you're in the middle of it and you're like, "What?"
Yeah, the whole love is blind thing. And that is because you have an emotional attachment. But Win and I are going to actually collaborate and do a meditation. And it's going to be short, I think,
Yeah.
so that it just takes you out of that moment and you can have perspective. So
Yes.
it's something that you'll want to use for a while until you get really used to like popping out and being able to see your situation, especially when you get
Mhm.
triggered.
Yes.
This will
That
help
is a
a lot.
huge, huge piece of a tool that I've used a lot when I'm, like, in the thick of the emotions that are just like, "Ah," like, just overwhelm almost. I'm
Yeah.
like, "Wait a minute. Zoom out, Wit. Like, what is this bigger picture happening right now?"
It's so true. And we've been triggered so much lately because we're letting go of programming. So the
Yes.
programming is coming to the surface. And also, people are like, I don't know what happened to my person that I'm with. Like, they're acting so crazy. And I'm like, they're probably all their gross stuff is coming to the surface to be transmuted out. So just give them space to do that, you know?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's an
It's
interesting time right now.
It's so interesting, and it's helpful for me anytime I'm, like, around somebody that I could see that that's happening, then I'm also like, "Okay, if I notice that and I'm also having a heightened response to it, I'm like, "Okay, so there's stuff in me that's coming up too alongside them." So it's a fun game where we're all kind of, like, mirroring
Yeah.
each other and sparking each other and, like, allowing all that stuff to come up, so what a time. What a time we're in.
It is. It's an amazing time, but also it's intense for
Yeah,
sure. And a
yeah.
lot of people are really bogged down
Mhm.
energetically because they're working really hard in the astral plane and then they're back, in their body and they're like, "Oh, what did I do last night?" You wake up and you feel like you've run a marathon in the middle of the
Yeah.
night.
Yep.
And I noticed you get a lot of times we're getting more dehydrated in the middle of the night than normal,
Yes.
having to go
I've
to the
noticed
bathroom
that.
more. Yeah.
Yes, the past week, I have been drinking way more water and, like, coconut water and electrolytes and just trying to
Mhm.
allow my body to keep up. And definitely, I'm finding I'm needing more water and more electrolytes the past week I've noticed this. Like, before
Yeah.
that, I was kind of, like, drinking my tea and drinking water and coconut water, and it was fine. And now it feels like I'm parched constantly.
Me too. It's been really weird. And I saw this thing about gray sea salt from France
Mm,
and how that it's like the best for minerals or something. So
interesting.
I put that under my tongue. I just happen to have some because you know what a
Nice.
hoarder I am because I live
Yeah.
out in the middle of
You
nowhere.
got your little apothecary in your
Yeah.
kitchen ready to go, yeah.
So I had some and I'm like, okay, I'll put it under my tongue. And I felt so much better.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So,
I might have to give that a go because, yeah, I'm just like, at some point, you're just like, I don't know how much more water I can drink. Like, like,
well, it starts
it's-
to dehydrate you too, because then you're not
yeah,
getting the electrolytes. So it's like,
yeah,
it's an interesting time. And I feel like we're being woke up so we can remember more of what we're
yeah.
doing at night.
Hmm.
And I get little snips, but I'm like, let me go to sleep. Quit,
Yeah.
waking me up all the time. But it's part of the learning process, I think.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
The body just being kind of clued into that stuff more. The
Yeah.
physical vessel is like, I know we've talked about this offline, honey, but just like the excitement of like, oh, I remember, I know more of that stuff. I saw like this in astral and like all that stuff. But then the other side of it is I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Like, so it's kind of one of those things. It's like, okay, we'll show you. You'll remember more, and also your body's gonna need to kind of catch up a little bit.
Yeah. It's interesting because, like, I woke up at 5 and I got up at 5, but I didn't get out of bed.
Yeah.
So I was in bed until 7. So I'm
Yep.
basically lying there or sitting there until 7,
Yep.
doing all my Telegram stuff and learning things and recording Healing with Honey. But it's like you don't want to get out of bed. You just want to be
That
there. Yeah.
yes, that's been my past week too, along with the dehydration stuff.
Hmm.
It's been the in bed longer. And I'm just, there was maybe a older version of me that would have been really judgmental about that. Be like, oh,
Yeah.
you're always up early, like, or, on the earlier side, why are you still laying in bed and kind of judging? But at this point, I'm like, you know what, Whit, you don't need to earn rest. You don't need to earn
No,
rest. Rest is for everyone at any moment that you need it. So take it.
exactly. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think coming out of that's really important because we're having to roll with all the changes, and the
Hmm.
frequencies are really big right now. There was a huge solar thing yesterday and it continued into today. So we'll just see what happens. But I think that makes you really tired because you're getting pushed. Your
Hmm.
programming is being pushed out of your body,
Hmm.
basically.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Whew, we're doing it. We're doing it. We're on the roller coaster.
We are. It's like waves, in the ocean. It's like,
Hmm.
let's wash this away.
Hmm.
So, and we're being pushed to higher ground too, I think.
Hmm.
And some of the parallels are just going away. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and we're going to do a show on it, so I won't say all of it, but
Sure.
basically, some of the parallels that are disappearing on the old Earth, like how we're just going to do the Dolores Cannon like idea. Some of
Hmm.
those are just going,
Hmm.
and some of those are ours, not necessarily our lifetimes, but our oversoul's lifetime.
Yep.
So we're resolving a lot of stuff right now.
Yeah, on so many levels. And it's so funny because as we have these conversations with each other and we're like, "Oh yeah, this is happening." I know, like I have this deep knowing that's just this much
Yeah.
of the full picture. So like, we're all like, "Oh my gosh, this is a lot." And it's like our oversoul's like, "And it's that much. You know this much."
Right. And
Yeah, so
eensy
it just
teensy.
yeah, so if you feel the feeling of all of it in your body, it is a fraction of it, but it doesn't mean that you're not feeling things that aren't, needing your attention and all that stuff. So it's, I don't know, long-winded way to say it's like be gentle, as Honey often says, like just take care of yourself, love yourself. Be
Hmm.
gentle with you. I always appreciate that you remind people to do that. Because until we're doing that just so often that it becomes habit, it's helpful to hear other people reminding us, I think.
Yeah. I feel like respect is one of the main things that we haven't had over the last several decades, like respect has gotten worse. And the respect is worse. It's the worst for ourselves than it is for
Yeah.
anybody else. But you can see how social media has shifted. Like people are really rude in some of the comments and stuff. And you're just
Sure.
like, how could they say that? Like, how could that even come out of their mouth? But
Yeah.
respect has kind of gone for a lot of people. So
Mhm.
it's really interesting. And that's why having that zoomed out view is important, because you are going to be more disrespectful if you have a bunch of emotional attachments to things, because
Mhm.
you're going to be
Yes.
upset.
Yes. And when you zoom out far enough, and this is kind of what I've done when I've seen those comments on different
Yeah.
videos and posts and whatnot, and when I zoom out far enough, I can see I'm like, oh, like, yes, that comment was pointed at someone else, but really zooming out far enough, it's about they're
Um,
commenting on them because we're all one, right? That's the unity
yeah.
kind of like thing. So it's really like, yes, they're pointing it and they're in a certain way, like, sending word daggers at somebody, but it's really they're stabbing themselves a bunch of times is what's going on.
It's true. The boomerang is really in effect right
Yeah.
now, or the rubber band. You know
Mhm.
how if you don't let go of it, it comes back and it snaps you
Yeah.
instead? That's basically what's happening, because it's almost like instant karma.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Oof. But yeah, the zooming out is huge in so many different ways. It's so helpful anytime I feel like I'm because I sometimes do get triggered by certain comments I'll
Oh,
see and
yeah.
I'm like, "Oh gosh, like that was a really nasty thing to say about that person." And then and I find myself kind of coming back to it even after I've gone past a video. I'm like, "Why am I still thinking about that?" And I zoom out and I'm like, "Oh, there is a part of me that still maybe believes maybe that nasty comment even about myself. Like I somehow attached it to myself in some way. So it allows me to see like some of the beliefs and the programming that I still have in me that I'm like, I was affected by that. I'm still thinking about it. There is a little bits of part of me that still kind of believe that about myself. So it's helpful. It's helpful in some ways if you choose to kind of utilize the zooming out tool in that way.
Oh, yeah.
As your own kind of gauge of like, where am I at? What kind of ways do I need to pour into myself and love myself? I don't know. I come back to self-love a lot, because
It's
for me,
huge.
that's where I end up feeling like more of my higher self is able to integrate more, is
Mhm.
when I'm loving myself so much.
Yeah, it makes the heart space open, which is where the inner child is now at. I feel like the
Mhm.
inner child moved up to the solar plexus recently, and that's where that consciousness sits.
Nice.
And that's who communicates with your soul, you know, who is your higher self.
Mhm.
So it's really a cool thing now to be able to talk to your higher self. And I know that Whit and I are doing that like all the time. It's a
Mhm.
constant thing. And sometimes if I'm feeling like, ooh, things are kind of funky, what's
Yeah.
going on? I'll be like, hey, what are you doing? What are you doing up there? Like, what's going on? Are you still here? Or whatever. Um, and I always get this like chuckle, like, don't worry, little one. I'm still around. But the souls are working so hard right now that sometimes it's your inner child is just operating you too.
Mhm. Yep.
So it just kind of depends on what your soul role is. But because
Yeah.
they're not present all the time. And I remember that when I was seeing individual people. And then my soul would be like, peace out, I gotta go do something, and here I was. I'm like, I have to be psychic right now. I have to tune in, you know, where are you? And then I'd be set, you cannot leave while I'm in the middle of appointments.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was like a hard line that was drawn. And,
Yes.
you know, and then they'd be back. Okay, okay, okay.
I definitely set up, if I'm doing something more casual or I'm taking a stroll or whatever, I'm kind of maybe less intentional about this. But yeah, if I'm doing like I'm recording a video or whatever, I really kind of sit down ahead of time. I'm like, okay, pulling back as much of my energy that I've kind of sent out.
Yeah.
And especially if my higher self is kind of, my higher self likes to be so many different places, as so many of ours are. We're very multidimensional. We're many different places
Mhm.
at once. And I'm like, okay, where is my energy right now? What is my like utmost importance focus, like at least in this body vessel right now? So I'll just pull back certain strands. I'm like, okay. I've got
Yes.
enough to do this right now.
Yeah, it really takes energy, and your soul has a lot of that energy. Like when your soul is like pulling and doing different things. Oh, that's funny. I just turned like bright yellow. And when your soul is doing different things, it's like so you're more exhausted. And I think that's why we're more exhausted in the morning when we wake up, because the
Mm,
soul is still busy and the inner child has, stayed there through the night. But I feel like the inner child now has like I mean, we have the silver cord, but it's almost like a phone line.
mhm.
So the inner child is learning now.
Yep.
And it's almost like, those little phones that were like the tin can.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
it's like we have a tin can phone to our higher self in the middle of the night, and we're getting more information, and we're also getting woke up in the middle of the night so that we can physically remember things.
Mhm.
So I've taken to writing stuff down in the morning, which
Yeah.
I hadn't done for a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
Writing things down has been so helpful for me. I originally was doing that at night. I started that last end of last year, and I was just kind of reflecting on my day, seeing if there was any triggers or anything that came up that I hadn't addressed during the day that okay, now I have a set time and I'm doing this work. But then I was like, oh, in the morning is also another good time for me to
Yeah.
write. And granted, I'm not sitting there for an hour doing this. It's like 15 minutes. But in the morning, it's been super helpful because then, yeah, I'll be able to recall certain things or
Mhm.
it'll be like setting intention for my day, that type of thing. But yeah, writing down, or I've found too, for me, sometimes being still in my body isn't where information is flowing. So I will stand up, I will take my phone and I will voice record as I'm walking and pacing. And sometimes I'll
Yeah.
put, I'll dance around or whatever in my kitchen. All of a sudden, just tons will come out. So if writing and stillness isn't your thing and you're like, but I still want to capture what I'm downloading, voice record on your phone is a huge tool for me. So feel free to try that out and see how that feels.
Yeah, absolutely. And because everything has cellular memory,
Mhm.
so your whole body is really a receiver. Your brain is kind of, I think the brain is a receiver. I don't really think it's meant to hold all that stuff that we've been forcing on it.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's part of the programming construct.
Yeah.
So that has to do with school. And
Right.
we're not really we're meant to be spontaneous. We're also meant to be in the moment. So I find myself like just this conversation we're having now, Whit recorded it on her phone what we were going to talk about today, but I had forgotten all the things. So before we talked, I was like, hey, if you happen to write that stuff down, that would be so good because I can't remember what
Yep.
we were going to talk about because I'm more focused on the moment at the time. But
Mhm.
I am writing stuff down all the time at this point because the recall isn't there as much, but I'm getting more
Mhm.
information in the moment than I ever used to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. The recall. I talked to you about this, honey, but I'll just share it on here too. If anyone can relate to this. I have used the same passcode for my debit card for a decade, 2 I don't know, you're probably supposed to change your passcode more often than that, but I didn't. And so I was at a shop the other day and I couldn't remember. I was just like, "Wait, what?" I, like, couldn't it was not there. So and there was a version of me maybe 5 years ago that would have freaked out and be like, "I'm losing my memory," and, and, like, spiraled about it, and now I'm just like, "Okay, Whit, you're making room for other things right now, you're being present in other ways," and so those details about, your passcode, your whatever, you know, a conversation I had, even 10 minutes ago where now I forgot the details of it unless I wrote it down. 'Cause I'm just more focused on what's right in front of me, so
Yeah.
it's interesting, it is interesting, and, so yeah, if anybody's watching that's like, "I can't remember certain things," like,
Words
some of that
too.
stuff is happening, some of that is just yeah.
Yeah. It's so prevalent right now.
Mhm.
Words and like how to formulate things sometimes goes. And then sometimes you're just totally on it too.
Yeah.
And everything
Yep.
is like coming through. But I feel like you're totally on it when your soul is like da 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 and say this and talk about this and so a lot of times I'm saying, can you be like wholly present during this conversation? Because even when you're writing a book, I think you're channeling
Oh,
most
yeah.
of the time, unless you're
Yes.
writing some kind of academic, like persnickety thing.
Yes. I think we're all channeling a lot more than we are consciously aware
Mhm.
of. That's
Yeah.
kind of what I've come to realize, and it just is a matter of what are the filters we've put in place, the programming that's kind of like, um, making it seem like we're not channeling or maybe that we're not aware that we're channeling, but I think a lot of the ideas of the creativity that your higher self is like, "Here, here, here, here."
Yeah.
Oh, spark this idea here, here.
Yeah. And when you're in that present moment, then your higher self has more access. So your soul is like bing, 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 and
Mhm.
you're just following the synchronicities.
Yes.
And it works
Yep.
so much better. It is a little weird for planning, I've noticed, like planning
Yeah.
things months in advance, but I feel like there's a few months right now where we're not really like planning is a little off at the moment.
Yes. The
Yeah.
planning piece. I've mentioned this and we've talked about this very briefly on other videos we've done, but I'm on this
Mhm.
like adventure across country right now where every month I'm in a new location and it's brilliant and amazing and I love it. And the question I get most often is, what is your plan? Where are you going next? What, you're doing this for a year, whatever. And I intentionally set it up where, like month to month, I maybe have an inkling of where I'll be next, but I honestly don't book my next place until like maybe 2 weeks out. Because things are shifting so much and changing so
Yeah.
much. And also sometimes I just don't get inspiration from my higher self until 2 weeks out. And that might freak a lot of people. I know it freaks out my family. They're like, "Where are you gonna be?" I'm like, "I don't know." And they're like, "What? What if you have no place to stay?" I'm like, "I'm fine. I always have a place to stay. I am not worried about that."
Oh, there's
Um,
so much available too. Like,
yes,
yeah.
yes. So that's, I guess, just a tangible real life example of allowing the planning to not maybe go so far out in the future because you just never know what's coming around the bend for you.
Mhm. No, we really don't. And it's almost like manifesting. You
Hmm.
know how when you manifest and you almost are ready to just be like, oh, is it going to happen or whatever?
Hmm.
But then the best thing happens.
Yep.
And it's because the universe is putting all the pieces together for you and creating the best possible scenario. And if we're in the present moment and we've totally handed it over and we're not hanging on to it for a while, which is what a lot of us do,
Yeah.
right? And then we're
Yeah.
finally letting it go. But if you just let go of control and you're like, you know what? I think this sounds really good. And you send it out to the universe with intention, you will get it back faster now than ever. That's what
Mhm.
I've noticed because you're
Yes.
releasing completely, and also
Yes.
there's less programming in the way.
Yes.
Yeah, so things are really
Definitely.
manifesting.
Yeah, you're not blocking. Because for me, when I think about manifestation, like all of the options are kind of, to me, on this buffet table in front of you. They're all right here ready. And
Yep.
then we've kind of put our own little like walls around us, the programming and then the,
Mhm.
the beliefs that we have, the limiting beliefs, kind of like that maybe we can't see parts of the buffet table. We can't see this option over here, or we think it's farther away than it actually is. And then once we're taking those like, barriers away, then it's like, oh, there it is. It's right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fun. That's kind of a newer kind of visual I've allowed myself, or my higher self probably gave it to me, of here's an example of what manifestation could look like for you. And I was like, oh, interesting. Okay. A big, long, never ending table of buffet options.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I
Yep.
remember I had this was years ago. I had just broken up with somebody. So this is before I met John.
Hmm.
And so it's probably like 13, 14 years ago. And he was nuts, this person. So
Yeah.
after this broke up, I dreamt that I was on this amazing road and everything. It was like Dr. Seuss. And I
Hmm.
kept walking down this road and new things were showing up for me, like new pieces of adventure. And I came out
Yes.
of like this canyon that was dark and gross and,
Uh-huh.
kind of scary. But as I came out of that canyon, I just followed that road. And that's manifestation. That's our journey of ascension.
Hmm.
So it's like, okay, you made it through that gross thing. Now, since you're saying no to that from now on, because I was like a hard no,
Hmm.
it changed everything. Like my perspective changed because I made a boundary.
Yep. Yep.
So it's just so good what's going
Yeah.
on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's brilliant. It's really, really fun. I really like to bring it back to the receiver. Brain as the receiver, and your higher self is kind of like the guide, kind of showing you and
Hmm.
bringing things in and all that stuff. Um, wow, that thought totally lost, just totally left my head. Whatever I was about to say, apparently that wasn't the right timing to say it. So I don't know where that went.
That's funny. I see the brain as kind of like almost like the spirals in the universe, really.
Hmm.
Because there's a lot of like weird twists and turns that the brain takes. When you look at gray matter, like it
Yes.
looks very strange, you
Yes.
know? And I feel like that's pathways.
Yeah.
So, and then you have the pineal gland, which people are working on now. Finally, like
Yes.
everybody's like, oh, I want to make sure my pineal gland isn't calcified and, all this stuff. It's so fantastic. The
Mhm.
route that everybody's taking and watching them blossom, kind of, is how
Yes.
I would say it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and everyone's kinda coming at it from a slightly different angle, even if we're doing, maybe taking a similar supplement, or maybe choosing not to drink certain water, whatever it is, like, we're all
Yeah.
kind of coming at it slightly different, and it's beautiful. I love it.
It really is. And just being, looking at other perspectives and saying, oh, okay, well, this person does it that way. And even if you think it's totally stupid,
Yeah.
you're like, okay, well, that's fine for them. They're having fun and it's working for them. So that's okay. And not
Yes.
getting emotionally attached to the fact
Yes.
that you would not do it that way.
Yes, that is actually this the buffet table comes up a lot in the way my higher self explains things. So coming
Yeah.
back to the manifestation buffet table, similar concept that I was shown is there's other people looking at their own buffet tables. And if I'm sitting over here and I walk past theirs and I'm like, that stinky or that one tastes gross or whatever.
Right.
Maybe that option for them was the best one, but I just poo-pooed on it and now they might not try it. So
Right.
the influence we have, like, granted, should we be listening to other people's comments? No. In an ideal world, we're tuned into our own higher self and we're just solely focusing on that. We're social creatures. We hear other people's comments. That's part of the game we're playing here.
Mhm.
But I thought that was a really interesting kind of example that my hair silk gave me, was like, the buffet table, there's always going to be things on the buffet table that you prefer and that you don't.
Yeah.
And commenting on someone else's preference and being, that's gross, that's nasty, I would never eat that, or I would never choose that, or whatever, potentially that could be their best option in that moment. So just
Yeah.
allowing them to experience it, and then maybe, in a couple months or a year, they might be eating the same things or choosing the same things you are, and cool, you can bond over that. But yeah, that was super helpful for me to grasp when I was shown that. I kind of saw the whole thing and I was like, "Oh yeah." I when I'm at a literal buffet, I'm not like, "Ew, ew, ew." Like, like that's not
I
something you
know.
do when you go to a buffet.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. It just reminds me of some of the things that people have tried to get me to eat in the past.
Yeah.
Potted meat and Limburger cheese and stuff that you're just like, no. But
What
there's
about
people that just love that stuff.
what about rattlesnake stew?
Oh yeah, my dad's rattlesnake stew. Talk about social disaster, because he took it to a potluck and I told everybody, I think I was 10, that's rattlesnake stew, don't eat it. You know,
Oh, I love that story so much.
it's so funny. And he still talks about it sometimes.
Yes.
He's like, yeah, I didn't really prepare it that well. He had to throw it away, but he's like very thrifty. So
Yeah.
he killed a rattlesnake and he knew that you could cook them up. So he did it. And I'm just like, I'm not eating it. And I'm going to tell everybody about it.
10-year-old honey was on a mission.
hmm Oh, it was funny. So, and
Oh,
we used to
God.
have the hippie potluck, once a week.
Yes. Get on down to the hippie potluck with the rattlesnakes new. Let's go.
Oh, it's funny. You just got to enjoy it. And at
Mhm.
that time, it was a stressful experience because I didn't want
Yeah,
anybody to eat it. Like here I'm 10 and thinking this is horribly scary.
sure.
But when you're a grown up and you see, so this is the zooming out, you're
Mhm.
like, that was so funny and awesome and ridiculous.
Yeah.
And it's not a big deal.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. The being in the linear kind of time concept that we
hmm
have I see it now as almost like a gift of looking back and then being able to see, like, oh, I didn't know what that was all about when it was happening. But now with the gift of being able to look back and see, be like, "Oh, that makes a ton of sense." Or like you said in this example, it's really not that big of a deal. Like in the moment I thought it was, but now in this like week, month, years that have gone by, I can see the big scheme of things, everything's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's our goal for the meditation. And we're going to
Yeah.
kind of switch it up. And so you'll want to listen to both channels because we're both going to
Mhm.
put a meditation on each channel. Well, yeah,
Mm.
we'll have one on each channel. And the goal is to be able to zoom out after you get triggered.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes. I'm so excited. We've got some really
Yeah.
great ideas for it and visuals for it as well. So it'll be good.
Yeah. It's going to be fun. So I'm
Yeah.
excited. Very cool. Thank you so much, Whit. This was a lot of fun.
Yes.
And
Thanks, honey.
yeah, so we'll just keep doing fun stuff, you guys. Enjoy the
Yes.
rest of your day and
Yes.
go look at Whit's channel.
Thanks, honey.
Okay. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.